Hi, I'm ZelRaze and welcome to our story! If you are new here, hi, I'm ZelRaze, your Filipino mom doing reaction videos online. And I also do live stream every Mondays to Fridays, every 9:30 p.m. Philippine time. If you see this thumbnail, ako na yan, ready to chat with you. Yes! Today po is another reaction video from yours truly, from Kendall Ray. Ang title ng kanyang vlog is The Truth About the McDonald's Hot Coffee Lawsuit. Hindi po ito sa Pilipinas, sa ibang bansa po ito. By the way, if you will enjoy this video, please click the thumbs up and also the subscribe button. Join the family, ZelRaze family! Hindi pa po kayo subscribe kay Miss Kendall Ray. She talks about murder, mystery, conspiracy, mga ganyan. Yan. Okay. I'm planning to do a two-part of this series, and this will be the part 1. Alright? So, wala lang pa tumpik-tumpik. Simulan na natin to. Headset on.
But yes, welcome back to my channel. Happy to have you join me for another video. And today we are doing another lawsuit. You guys really liked my last lawsuit. I was saying you guys really liked the Wendy's chili finger lawsuit. That was an interesting one. And after I did that video, I got a lot of requests for the McDonald's
as a reaction
lawsuit, or to tell the true story of it. So today we're going to be talking about a woman named Stellas Background. And she was born on December 14th, 1912. Her parents were from England, and they had 3 daughters in their family, Ethel, Stella, and Madeline. And they all were raised in New York City. Stella ended up marrying a man named Henry G. Liebeck, and they had 3 kids of their own, Nancy, Judy, and Jim. Stella was known as a very strong and independent woman, and long after reaching her retirement age, she continued to drive herself to keep working full-time, which was very impressive.
My mother at 79 was very active. She drove well. She very seldom dropped anything. She very seldom spilled anything.
That's her daughter, Nancy.
For her age, at 79 years old, I thought she was remarkable.
She lost her husband in 1991, and at that point, she decided to go ahead and retire from her job as a department store clerk. After that, she decided to move to Santa Fe to be closer to her daughter. And Stella was still a very active, independent person at her age, so her kids didn't feel like they had to constantly check on her. They didn't have to hire any help for her. She could pretty much still take care of herself. So that brings us to February 27th, 1992. It was about a week after Stella had retired, and her son Jim flew out to celebrate and spend some time with her. But his trip came to an end and he had to go back, so Stella was gonna be taking him to the airport. He had an early morning flight. So Stella actually wanted to drop him off at the airport, and she went with her grandson Chris. They dropped him off, and then after leaving the airport, they decided they wanted to get some breakfast. So they decided to stop at the nearby Golden Arches, McDonald's. And this location was at 5001 Gibson Boulevard. They went through the drive-thru, and Chris ordered a value meal, and Stella ordered a little 49-cent cup of coffee. After they picked up their food at the window, they drove over to a spot in the parking lot and parked so they could get organized and situate, get, some coffee creamer and sugar into Stella's cup. He was driving a 1989 Ford Probe, and it didn't have cup holders, actually. So Stella kind of held it between her legs. She balanced it, and then she tried removing the lid. And as she was taking the lid off, the cup flipped upside down and poured all over her legs.
Wanted to get the top off to put cream and sugar in, so I put it between my knees to steady it with this hand, trying to get the top off, and it just went, ooh.
And as soon as the coffee hit her, she started screaming because it was scalding hot. And she was wearing a sweatsuit, so it was soaked and stuck to her skin, and she literally could not get away from it. She tried to get out of the car as fast as she could, and then of course pulled the sweatpants off, but the damage was done.
All I remember is trying to get out of the car. I screamed, not realizing I was burned that bad. I knew I was in terrible pain.
Chris happened to have a sheet in the back of the car, so he wrapped her in that, had her lay down in the back seat, and then drove her to the nearest hospital. And the whole way she was just in agony. During the drive, she was nauseous and lightheaded. She was also cold and shaking uncontrollably. And when they got to the hospital, they were told there was a multi-car accident and they were treating multiple victims from that. So the wait was gonna be way too long. And at this point, Stella was in so much pain that she was starting to go into shock. So Chris drove as fast as he could to the next closest hospital, which is Northside Presbyterian. And Stella was admitted 45 minutes after initially being burned. And as soon as the ER doctor saw how bad her burns were, they were horrific, he immediately called in the burn specialist. And he was shocked too. I mean, her injuries were far worse than anyone really could have imagined. And the doctors weren't even sure if Stella would survive.
I was burned so severely that they didn't think I would live.
I'm a nurse, and I was horrified at the type of injuries that she had sustained, the skin grafts and the pieces that were still ongoing. So it was kind of a shocker, because it's one thing to hear, but it's another thing to see.
The coffee had burned over 16% of her body. All of her inner thighs, her genital area, her groin area, her butt, and 6% of those burns were full thickness burns, otherwise known as their degree burns.
A third degree burn or a full thickness burn means that the entire layer of skin is burnt through, is gone.
These types of burns require extensive surgeries and a series of skin grafts normally, and of course a bunch of treatment after that just to help her wounds heal. And with bad burns like this, they also have to do something called debridement, which is the removal of damaged tissue from the actual wound, and it is extremely painful. Then there's something called whirlpool treatment, which is used on patients with severe burns that need extensive debridement. And this treatment is so painful, and also it's very, very expensive. So Stella, at 79 years old, freshly retired, has these horrific burns. She had to be in the hospital for 8 days straight, and during that time she lost 20 pounds. And Stella was a very small woman. This was 20% of her body weight, so now she was 83 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
And even though doctors were very unsure if Stella would survive, she did, and she was released from the hospital. But it was not gonna be an easy road to recovery at all, and she was gonna need full-time care for the next 3 weeks, even while she was at home. And of course, she was left with really horrific scars, and she was disabled for the next 2 years. And her medical bills really racked up quickly. Even after Medicare kicked in, she still owed $10,500. And she was also gonna need thousands of dollars for future care as well. And what made it even worse was her daughter had to take time off of work in order to take care of her mom. And she lost over a month of income, which was $5,000. So their family actually really suffered from this. And just the images alone of Stella's burns is enough to horrify you, honestly, or it should be. They are horrific looking. I'm gonna put the pictures in now, so I'm warning you, if you are squeamish, look away. But I think it's important for people to actually see these images, because people will say all kinds of shit about Stella and then they'll see these pictures. We'll talk more about this, but people really tried to paint Stella as this person who was out to scam McDonald's, spilled hot coffee on herself. But look at these images. I mean, would anyone in their right mind do that to themselves on purpose? So anyway, most people who see those pictures especially think that Stella should have been entitled to some type of compensation for everything that she went through. But Stella didn't even want to sue McDonald's, actually. At first, all she wanted was compensation for her medical bills and for her daughter's lost wages while she was taking care of her. And she just wanted McDonald's to know that their coffee was being served way too hot and prevent this from possibly happening to someone else.
I was not in it for the money. I was in it because I wanted to bring the temperature down so that other people will not go through the same thing.
So her daughter added up all the medical bills, all the lost wages, and everything totaled up to about $18,000. So she wrote a letter to McDonald's, asked them if they could pay this amount, explained how horrific this was for their mother, and she at this point thought this was a one-time mistake. So she asked McDonald's to just check all of their coffee machines and make sure that none of them were serving coffee that was scalding hot. Now at this time, and keep in mind it was the 90s, McDonald's was making $1.3 million per day just on coffee. So you'd think that this would be a no-brainer for them and super easy. All they have to do is send the money that this woman is requesting, and she's not even gonna sue them. It's a good deal. But they decide to get back to her and offer her $800 out of that $18,000. So obviously Stella's family was very upset. They felt like at this point they needed to get a lawyer and that maybe they should sue. But Stella was still very hesitant about the whole thing. She had never filed a lawsuit before, and she'd already been through so much stress. But she really just didn't have any other choice because $800 was not even going to come close to covering her medical bills. She needed this money. So Stella worked with 2 lawyers named Ken Wagner and Reed Morgan. They filed a lawsuit against McDonald's for gross negligence for selling coffee that was unreasonably dangerous and defectively manufactured.
We bought a product, it was used as intended, it was unreasonably hot and therefore unreasonably dangerous, and those were the essential facts.
And there were several attempts to settle the lawsuit before the trial even started. At first, her lawyers offered to settle for $90,000, but McDonald's said no. So they went back to the drawing board and actually asked for $300,000 the second time. And of course, McDonald's said no. So they had a mediator, which is a middleman, come in and try to settle the lawsuit. And they suggested that about $225,000 would be fair to settle at. But McDonald's refused, and that went absolutely nowhere. So they had to move forward with a trial. So the trial of Liebeck versus McDonald's restaurants began on August 8th, 1994. Stella's attorneys argued that McDonald's was serving their coffee way too hot and doing it on purpose. They argued that they were requiring their franchise owners to serve coffee at dangerously hot temperatures. According to their official franchise rules at the time, their coffee had to be served between 180 and 190 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 30 degrees hotter than most at-home coffee machines, and other restaurants usually serve their coffee between 140 and 160 degrees. And liquid that's 190 degrees Fahrenheit can definitely cause third-degree burns in just 2 to 7 seconds. And of course, the hotter a liquid is, the faster the skin burns. So they started arguing in court that if McDonald's just served their coffee like 20 degrees lower, then it would take up to 20 seconds for someone to get a third-degree burn, which gives you a lot more time. This would give someone a chance to remove any clothing they have, especially if they're wearing something like sweatpants. And they also brought up that McDonald's had a long history of ignored complaints about customers specifically that had been burned. It turns out that in just 10 years, 1982 to 1992, their coffee had burned more than 700 people.
700
In most cases, it was people that did the exact same thing that Stella did, accidentally spilled the coffee on their laps in the car.
And that's it for part 1. Please be back tomorrow for the part 2 of this series of lawsuit against McDonald's. Alright, so if you have any suggestions or comments for another reaction video sa gusto ninyong reactan ko, please do comment it down below. And malay nyo, yung sinuggest ninyong video ang susunod kong re-reactan. Sa tingin nyo ba, tama ba na nag-sue si Lola at the age of 79 years old against gay McDonald's? Do you have horror stories also na napaso kayo dahil sa McDonald's coffee or hot chocolate? Comment it down below.
Like and share, like and share. I'll see you guys tomorrow for our part 2. Bye!